Kitamanan, lesson number 54. Right? I'm so good. Nanach, nachma, meuman. At the end of 2 years' time, Paro dreamt that as he was standing over the Nile, 7 cows suddenly arose out of the river. O God, my Lord, you are very great. You have done glory and splendor. You have wrapped yourself in light as in a garment, and stretched out the heavens like a curtain. Number one must guard one's memory very carefully, so that one does not fall into forgetfulness. An aspect of the death of the heart, the most important aspect of memory, is to always have in mind the future world, that one does not think that there is only one world. By binding one's thoughts to the future world, a unification of God, my Lord, is brought about. Yid-Kei Vav-Kei Elikim, Lord God, represents the complete name, which corresponds to the future world as brought. It is also explained in the Zohar. On the verse, God, my Lord, represents the beginning of faithfulness, the elevation of thought to the future world. Represents the beginning of faithfulness, the elevation of thought to the future world. Letter 2, always having in mind the future world by binding one's thoughts to it, is both a general and a particular practice. In general, this is how a God-fearing person should conduct himself first thing upon awakening in the morning, before one begins speaking. One should recall the future world and then continue in this way as one goes about individual chores. This is because this entire world is an embodiment of the lowest levels of holiness, the feet of holiness, as in, the earth is my footstool. Although some of the highest levels of holiness are also manifested in this world, nevertheless, their essence is not manifested. Only an illumination that shines in the category of feet. The category of feet itself, though, is a manifestation of essence in this world. The category of feet itself, though, is a manifestation of essence in this world. Now, every day has its thoughts, speech, and actions. And God constricts himself from the infinite to the ultimate until the center point of the material world upon which a person stands, presenting thought, speech, and action for each individual, for each day, each person, and each place appropriately. For each day, each person, and each place appropriately. Within this thought, speech, and action that God presents to a person are messages for him to come closer to his service, which is why one must think deeply and increase one's understanding in order to understand the individual messages that God clothes within this thought, speech, and action of this specific day, even regarding work or business. Whatever God presents to a person on any day, one must deepen and increase one's thoughts in order to understand God's messages. But increasing this understanding must be done in a measured way, so that one does not go beyond the limits of holiness, but remains within the limits of one's human understanding. To that extent must a person expand his thoughts on this matter. Thus one should not search beyond one's level, for do not seek what is beyond you. This is the meaning of you are very great. You have done glory and splendor. When one wants to partake of this world represented by you have done glory and splendor, which correspond to the feet that are manifested in this world. For the feet are an aspect of nachach and holier, which correspond to glory and splendor. As stated in the above Zohar, you have done glory and splendor. These are the 2 branches of willow leaves, which correspond. These are the 2 branches of willow leaves, which correspond to nachach and holier, which correspond to the feet as known. This must be done as in, you are very great. That is by the increasing one's understanding in a measured and constricted way. This is very, which refers to the left side, the source of the constriction, as stated there in the Zohar, very. This refers to the left side. Even one who has some understanding in this, who merits understanding the messages that God is giving him in each instance, if this person wants to devote himself just to this, to mundane affairs, since he anyway understands the messages that God is giving him, this would be a mistake. This is because one must suffice oneself of this world. This is because one must suffice oneself of this world with only that which one absolutely take from it. Only that which one must absolutely take from it. This is for two reasons. The first is because this holiness that is clothed within this mundane affairs is an aspect of feet which is a low holiness, as in the sins of my ankles have surrounded me, meaning that the klippas are always surrounding it and wanting to derive sustenance from it, meaning that the klippas are always surrounding it and wanting to derive sustenance from it. Therefore, this is a dangerous place to be. For this reason, one must suffice oneself with only the absolute necessities. The other reason is that there is a higher service than this. That is a higher holiness, and one must serve God in those holier and higher ways. That is, even though the tzaddik and sage, who has a great mind with which to understand the messages that God gives him every day in every event, even in mundane affairs, thus allowing him to serve God in all ways of the world, including in mundane affairs, if he should desire to devote himself only to this, to mundane affairs, since he anyways is able to know the messages they contain and can come closer to God thereby. This would still be a mistake. This is because one should not spend more time than necessary in mundane affairs. Even someone who knows and understands the messages. This is for two reasons. The first reason is that trying to serve God in mundane affairs is spiritually very dangerous. And the second reason is that there is a holier and higher service than this, which is the holiness of the Torah and the commandments. Therefore, even someone who knows the messages should act with restraint and suffice himself for this world with the bare necessities. Sufficing represents wrapped yourself in light as in a garment, which corresponds to omaaiiinnn. Light is full with a vav. Regarding the way yikid, on the other hand, who do not suffice themselves, as in the belly of the wicked will be lacking. Their meuran light is lacking. The letter vav is in me'eras, or the curse of God is in the house of the wicked. The righteous, however, who live with restraints, as in a tzaddik is to satiate his soul, have a full light, as in God saw that the light was good. And good always refers to the tzaddik, as in say to the tzaddik that he is good. Tate, give me a voice. But even from that, with which one suffices oneself, one must put aside a portion for charity. This is an aspect of he stretches out the heavens like a curtain for the ark of the covenant, which is an aspect of poverty, is beneath a curtain, and the curtain corresponds to the ark of the covenant, which is an aspect of charity. And the curtain corresponds to the ark of the covenant, which is an aspect of charity. That is through the charity that one gives to the recipient, one brings about the unification between the tzaddik and the congregation of Israel. For the provision of the tzaddik to the congregation of Israel corresponds to the provision of the curtain to the ark of the covenant, as in he stretches the heavens like a curtain. Number 3, for the masses, though, who lack the understanding to delve into this and to understand the messages, all this takes place automatically via sleep, tzitzis, tefillin, torah, prayer, and business dealings. Sleep is an aspect of binding one's thoughts to the future world in general, corresponding to God, my Lord. For during sleep the soul rises to the future world. Tzitzis and tefillin correspond to. You are very great, for tefillin represent increasing the intellect, since tefillin correspond to the mind as known, which symbolizes the increase of intellect to understand the messages that God gives to a person every day. Tzitzis represent constriction, which corresponds to very, as said, since the tchelis represents the throne of judgment, which corresponds to constriction. Therefore tzitzis precede tefillin, as in his left hand is below my head, and his right hand embraces me, for the left represents judgment, corresponding to the constriction represented by the tzitzis, whereas the right represents the mind, corresponding to the tefillin. The Torah represents sufficing, for the Torah corresponds to the tree of life, because it contains sustenance for all. That is, everyone gets his needs met from it. Which is an aspect of sufficing, and Torah study itself represents sufficing. As the sages said, it is not your responsibility to finish the job, and thus Torah study represents sufficing. Even the masses that cannot learn fulfill the obligation of Torah study by reciting Shema Yisrael. As our sages said, prayer represents glory and splendor, for prayer is for temporal affairs. As the sages said in Shabbos 10:8, this corresponds to the earth is my footstool, which corresponds to the feet of holiness that are clothed within this world. The business dealings represent. He stretches the heavens like a night curtain, which corresponds to the unification of the tzaddik with the congregation of Israel. For the tzaddik and the congregation of Israel correspond to masa, himat, and business dealings. The tzaddik is called masa, for he carries the world. As a nursing woman, Yisa carries the suckling, he also carries all the blessings. Has written blessings upon the head of the tzaddik, as in he saw a blessing from God. He also carries the seminal drop of all the souls. As a noisei, a bag of seed, providing for the congregation of Israel, which the noisim gives to the entire world. For this reason, the congregation of Israel is called matan. As in, she titain provides to her household, and a set amount to her house made. Thus the unification of the tzaddik with the congregation of Israel is brought about by way of masa and matan. Now the unification of the tzaddik with the congregation of Israel is brought about through mas and matan. This is because in everything in the world there is a spark of holiness that fell when the vessels broke. This breakage represents the broken letters that fell into each and every object in the world. Everything has its time at which to come into the possession of someone who comes from the same source as the sparks in this object. And when this thing comes to this person and he is sustained by it, that is from the broken letters that comprise it, through this the broken letters become encompassed within this person. Through this the broken letters become encompassed within this person in his life force, and a full spiritual structure is thus built that spreads throughout his entire body. And a full spiritual structure is thus built that spreads throughout his entire body. In this way the letters are perfected and completed. This object must remain with this person to use until all the letters and sparks connected with his root have been used. Then the item will leave his possession to go to another person, for the time has come to elevate the remaining letters that are from the root of this other person, which is why they must leave the first person's possession. Sometimes, though, the object later returns to the possession of the first person, since he did not initially have the soul parts of nefesh, ruach, neshama, to allow him to perfect these letters. Later, though, when he attains these soul parts, he is able to perfect the remaining letters. In the meanwhile, though, the object must be with the other person. And when one perfects these letters, one's nefesh, ruach, neshama receive an illumination from the illuminations of these letters that have come to him and been perfected while with him. Through this illumination, one shines into the root of one's nefesh, ruach, neshama, which is unification of the tzaddik and congregation of Israel, which are the roots of all souls. This illumination brings about a union between the tzaddik and the congregation of Israel, referred to as masa and matan. For this reason, business dealings, in fact, everything including Torah study, are called masa and matan, for they bring about a union between the tzaddik and the congregation of Israel, which is called masa and matan. Number 4, but in order to guard memory, one must guard oneself from falling into the category of an evil eye, of the death of the heart. This is because memory is mainly connected with the eye, as in for a reminder between your eyes, for forgetfulness comes through the evil eye, by way of the death of the heart, as in, I have been forgotten from the heart like a dead person. Now the evil eye and the death of the heart are the same concept, for vision is dependent upon the heart. Therefore, regarding Novel, who had an evil eye, the verse says, his heart died within him. Also, the death of the heart corresponds to the breaking of the tablets, since the heart corresponds to the tablets, as in inscribe them on the tablets of your heart, and forgetfulness is caused by the breaking of the tablets. As our sages said, had the first tablets not been broken, there would be no forgetfulness in the world. Hence, forgetfulness is essentially caused by an evil eye, which corresponds to the death of the heart, which corresponds to the breaking of the tablets, the main cause of forgetfulness. Thus, Absalom, who bore an evil eye towards his father's throne, is said to have suffered from the death of the heart. As written, he took 3 daggers and stabbed them into Absalom's heart. Therefore he did not leave behind a bezH, male offspring, since he had blemish, zikura, in memory, through an evil eye. King David, though, fled from his throne in escaping from Absalom, and was cursed by Shimi ben Gader, said, perhaps God will see my eye, says one who realizes that he has fallen victim of an evil eye. If he does not feel capable of withstanding it, should flee from it. However, one who can rectify it should do so, but in order to know the route through which to rectify it, one must know the nature of the specific type of evil eye. For there are several types of evil eye. If one has fallen into the evil eye of power, pride seeking, when a person is jealous of another's position, one must do it in the root of power, pride, which is the root of kingship, an aspect of the Messiah, which is the root of kingship, as in, may he give power to his king and elevate the horn of his Mashiach, anointed one, Messiah. This corresponds to an evil eye, as in, beautiful eyes are and good looking. Said about David, who is the Messiah. Abba Shul said, I used to be a grave digger. I came once upon a cave once opened up beneath me, and I was standing up to my nose in the eye socket of a dead person. When I stepped back, they said that was Avshalom's eye. This is the meaning of what Abba Shul said. I used to be a grave digger, because Abba Shul always endeavored to rectify the evil eye, which is called death, is said, a ma'ara cave. A ma'ara cave once opened up beneath me. A cave represents bonding, as the ma'ar embrace of a man with his spouse. Beneath me. Beneath me represents truth, as in truth will sprout from the earth. For someone with a good eye will be blessed, and blessings are an aspect of truth, as written. Whoever blesses himself in the land will be blessed by the God of truth. Whoever blesses himself in the land will be blessed by the God of truth. So this is what Abba Shul said. Through his truth, bonding to God was open for him, so he stood up to his nose in the eye socket of a dead person, meaning that on account of the bonding, meaning that on account of his bonding, he endangered himself to enter into the eye of a dead. He endangered himself to enter into the eye of a dead person, that is, into an evil eye, until he had to avail himself of the aspect of Messiah in order to subdue the evil eye. This is up to my nose, which represents the spirit of our nose, the Messiah of God. But when I stepped back, they told me That was Avshalom's eye, for Avshalom had fallen into this evil eye. When he stepped back, thus means after the rectification, when he returned the aspect of Messiah to its place, to the category of behind, which is the root of the King Messiah, as in the King is bound in the braids. In the braids of the meuman, bound refers to the knot of the tefillin, which is behind the head. As our sages said, you shall see my behind. This is the knot of the tefillin. This is the soul of my master, who will be bound up in the bundle of life. Stebet. About David, referring to the knot of the tefillin, will the tefillin represent life? As our sages said, whoever lays tefillin merits life as God, as said God is upon them, they will live. Therefore Avshalom was not told that this was Avshalom's eye until after he returned back, for had he known beforehand, perhaps he would not have endangered himself so much to enter into such an evil eye, for it is very dangerous. Number 5, furthermore, one must guard the eye from the power of imagination. For even one who has a good eye must guard it from this. As we can see, even one who possesses good vision can make mistakes, such as when seeing something from afar, it may look like other than what it truly is. Therefore, one must guard carefully from this. Now the power of imagination comes from an evil tongue. This is because the power of imagination is the power of animal nature. For even an animal possesses the power of imagination, so his slander has fallen into animal nature. And therefore the power of imagination, the power of animal nature, has overcome him. This is because a slanderer is a fool, and when knowledge departs from a person, he falls away from the love of God, and falls into animal nature, as in, since you have loathed knowledge, so I loathe you from being my priest. A priest corresponds to Abraham, who loves me. To you are my priest. The priest will come scooped in the power of imagination. Animal nature overpowers a person, as in, my people are nidmu, destroyed without knowledge. Nidmu, that is the medame, power of imagination. Number 6, now this power of imagination always seeks a vessel in which to reside, which is why it always seeks to dwell in the mouth of one who studies Jewish law. For this reason, when such a person comes up with a novel torah idea, it is pleasant and acceptable, since it has come from the power of imagination, which is the comparing of one thing to another. However, the negative side of it overrides its good side, and these novel ideas harm one's sustenance. However, the negative side of it overrides its good side, and these novel ideas harm one's sustenance. This is because novel ideas create heaven and earth, as in telling Sion, you are Ami, my people. Don't read this Ami, but Imi, you are just with me, just as I created heaven and earth with my word. So to you, this brings all the influx and blessings to the world, as written, may God open for you his storage houses of good and the heavens. But when these novel ideas come from the power of imagination, then false heavens are created, and famine comes to the world. And famine comes to the world, and though they contain good the words of Torah, which represent satiety, nevertheless, because the negative overrides the good, the evil overwhelms, and the good is neutralized. As in, it was not evident that they had entered into them, for the power of the 7 years of famine had overrode the power of the 7 years of plenty, which is the overriding of evil over good, to the extent that the good is not even evident on account of the evil, as in it was not evident. Now the reason why the power of imagination seeks to dwell specifically in the mouth of one who studies Jewish law is because it was created on the eve of Shabbos at twilight. So when the Shabbos came in, it was left without a body having been created for it. This is as stated in the Zohar on the verse that God created to make, explaining the hair that the klippos, which are an aspect of the power of imagination, were created at twilight on the eve of the Shabbos, And when the Shabbos came in, they were left bodiless bodiless spirits. Therefore, the power of imagination, corresponding to the klipos, is a bodiless spirit that seeks a body for itself in which to dwell. So it goes to those who study Jewish law, for they create itself, for they create everything with their torah to study. This is why it goes to dwell with them, so that a body will be created for it by them, in which it will be able to clothe itself. And this is the meaning of holiest, literally the repetition of the dream. The reason why a dream, an aspect of the power of imagination, seeks to dwell with those who shoin and study Jewish law, is because the matter is all readied by God, and God is rushing to carry it out, as in that God created to make, that everything was ready by twilight on the eve of Shabbos, and when the Shabbos came in, God rushed to make the klipos, power of imagination without a body, for which reason it always seeks to dwell upon those who study Jewish law. This is also the meaning of Paro's dreams are one. Paro's dreams, an aspect of the power of midame, imagination, a self-destructing force, as in don't tafriu, interrupt the people, come from one, that is, from love. For one represents love as explained elsewhere, as specifically from fallen love. This corresponds to my people are nidmu, destroyed, nullified, without knowledge, because imagined, destroyed, nullified, imagined, without knowledge, because you have loathed knowledge. Hence, through the departure of knowledge on account of the evil tongue, an aspect of a slander is a fool, for knowledge has departed from a person. One thus falls away from the love of God into animalistic loves. Then the power of imagination of animal nature overpowers a person, and through the power of imagination memory is blemished, and one falls into forgetfulness. Come see now how beautifully and pleasantly the entire passage of my people are nidmu is interconnected. My people are nidmu without knowledge means that on account of a blemish of knowledge, the medame, imagination, overpowers. Then because you have loathed knowledge, so I loathe you from being my priest. For on account of a blemish in knowledge, one falls away from holy loves, which correspond to a priest, and then the power of imagination corresponding to my people, nidmu, overpowers a person. This is the conclusion of the verse. You forgot your God's torah. You forgot, since on account of a blemish in knowledge, the power of imagination overwhelms a person, causing a blemish in memory, bringing out one to forgetfulness. Hence I will forget your sons myself. For by blemishing memory and falling into forgetfulness, one has no male offspring, as explained above regarding Avshalom, who did not merit male offspring. On account of having blemished memory, thus I will forget your sons myself. And for this reason, power decreed specifically against the boys, because power represents the power of imagination, a self-destructing power, as said, which overwhelms memory, which corresponds to bezH, male offspring. For when the power of imagination overwhelms, it blemishes and destroys zikurai, memory. So power decreed, all boys that are born shall you cast into the Nile. For the Nile of Egypt is the Pishon River. The Pishon halacha is the mouth of those who study Torah laws. That is, Paro wanted to blemish memory, represented by male above offspring, to the power of imagination that dwells upon those who study Torah laws. Now the power of imagination can be subdued to the power of the hand, as in I was imagined in the hand of the prophets, the hand corresponding to joy, as in you shall rejoice in all the endeavors of your hands, representing musical instruments played by hand, through which a spirit of prophecy dwells upon the prophets, as stated, bring for me a musician. This is because an instrument gathers in the spirit and merges good and evil, for there's and merges good and evil, for there's a despondent spirit, a broken spirit, an evil spirit. For there is a despondent spirit, a broken spirit, an evil spirit, as stated above about Saul, an evil spirit terrified him. And there is a good spirit, as written, your good spirit should guide me in the plain, which corresponds to the prophetic spirit, the Holy Spirit. But when good and evil are mixed, one cannot receive true prophecies. Therefore it is stated regarding Shaul, he prophesied falling down, literally naked, which Rashi explains as meaning insanely, for it was mixed with a foolish spirit, a despondent spirit, depressed spirit. Now the one who plays an instrument, collects and gathers with his hand the good spirit, the prophetic spirit, from the despondent spirit. Thus he must know how to play. He must know how to collect and gather and find the parts of the spirit one by one in order to compose a melody which is joy. In other words, he must know how to compose a good spirit, a prophetic spirit, which is the opposite of the despondent spirit. For he must know how to go up and down with his hand on the instrument he is playing, so that he is able to compose perfect joy. And when the prophet hears this melody from the one who knows how to play, he then receives from him a prophetic spirit that the musician had gathered in from the midst of the despondent spirit. This is, he will play with his hand, and it will be good for you, for he gathers and collects the good from the evil. Now the prophetic spirit is gathered and composed mainly by the hand. For that is where the spirits are entrusted, as written, I entrust my spirits in your hand, and in his hand is the soul of all living creatures and the spirit of all human flesh. This is when the musician played, the hand of God was upon him. Hence, by playing on a musical instrument with the hand, the musician thereby separates the good spirit from the evil spirit, which is the concept of the prophetic spirit. All this corresponds to the subduing of the imagination, which represents the evil spirit, the foolish spirit, which wants to blemish and confound the good spirit, the prophetic spirit. It is subdued and eliminated by way of the joy arising from the musician playing with his hand. For the overpowering of the imagination is on account of sadness, for imagination corresponds to the despondent spirit, the broken spirit, evil spirit, which confounds the good spirit, the prophetic spirit, which is an aspect of memory of binding one's thoughts to the future world. Therefore, the only way to attain the prophetic spirit, the Holy Spirit, is through joy, which is manifested in playing of music with the hand, is written, when the musician played, the hand of God came upon him, as in he will play with his hand, and it will be good for you. Now the musician must know how to play well, and the instrument must also be perfect, so that a mixture of all the good and bad spirits do not all come out at once. Therefore he must know how to play well. And the instrument his playing must also be perfect, so that he is able to choose the right notes and focus perfectly on the melody as appropriate, which is an aspect of separating. The good spirit corresponding to joy, to the prophetic spirit, from the despondent spirit, which is the evil spirit. For when the instrument is not perfect, or the musician does not know how to play well, and to go up and down with his hand in order to choose the good spirit from the evil spirit, the verse says of him, a fool brings out all his spirit, meaning that he brings out all the spirit at once. And then the melody will certainly not be composed. This is because the essence of the pleasantness of melody is made by choosing the spirit, which is the air that produces the sound. As known to students of music, that is, melody is essentially the choosing of good spirit from evil spirits, and when all the spirit comes out at once, coming out as it is, a mixture of good and evil. The melody and joy are not composed, and the imagination is not subdued. This is alluded to when his spirit comes out and will return to Admasai, literally his earth. Admasai, referring to the Medama, the imagination. That is when all the spirit comes out. One reverts to the imagination, for one has not subdued the imagination, since one has not been able to gather and choose the good spirit, and thus all the spirit comes out mixed with good and evil. However, when one possesses the power of the hand that gathers and separates the good spirit from the evil spirit, then one subdues the imagination, as in I was imagined in the hand of the prophets. This is because the essence of prophecy comes from the concept of the hand that separates the good spirit from the evil spirit, by way of which one subdues the imagination, which corresponds to a mixture of the evil spirit with the good spirit. This is the meaning of what is written. One who has ascended to the heaven and who has ascended to the heaven and descended, who has gathered a handful of spirit, who has bundled water in a garment, who has gathered a handful of spirit, who has gathered a handful of spirit, who has bundled water, who has gathered a handful of spirit, who has gathered a handful of spirit, who has bundled water in a garment, who has established the ends of the earth, who has ascended to the heaven and descended, who has ascended to the heaven and descended corresponds to the musician, for the musician goes up and down with the melody, for he must go up and down on the strings as appropriate for the melody in order to gather the spirit. Thus who has gathered a handful of spirit, a handful literally, for the hands are the source of the spirit, since the essence of spirit is the hands, in which the spirits are entrusted, as said. Then who has bundled water in a garment, water corresponds to the heart, as written, pour out your heart like water. That is, by collecting the spirit, one bundles water in a garment, guarding the heart so that it is not ruled by imagination. Who has established the halvai of the earth means that one thereby establishes the aspect of feet that are clothed in this world. Halvai refers to feet, as written, he led me through seforim, ankle-deep water. For through melody with the hand one subdues the imagination. For through melody with the hand one subdues the imagination and attains memory. Which is an aspect of knowing, for through melody with the hand, one subdues the imagination and attains memory. Which is an aspect of knowing how to understand all the messages in all phenomena of this world, which are aspects of the divine life force, of the feet of holiness that are clothed in all things of this world. Thus who has established the halvai of the earth, which means that one elevates and establishes the feet of holiness that are clothed in this world. This is the end of 2 years. 2 years represents slanders, about whom it is written, a day for a year, through whom the aspect of holy love corresponding to the priest will come a scoop, was blemished. Thus Mikates at the end of, referring to a blemish of the comet's paradremt, which is the power of imagination. He was standing over the Nile. The Nile is the pisho, in a mouth that studies Jewish laws, that is overpowered by the power of an imagination. Out of the Nile arose. Means that the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine, representing the good and evil, and the evil come on account of both. The evil increases and overpowers the good, as in it was not evident that they had been consumed by them. This is rectified by Joseph, as in, God also gathered my shame, which ameliorates the evil, which is an aspect of the famine, as in, so that you never again bear the shame of famine among the nations, which corresponds to gather the spirit, to a man in whom is the Spirit of God. For this reason it is said about him, Joseph will place his hand over your eyes, for by way of the hand is the eye, guarded from the power of imagination. Caesar 298a, regarding the verse, God my Lord, you are very great. This is alluded to, I will remember my melody by night. I will speak with my heart and search my soul. By night, which is when the spirits are entrusted, as in your hand I entrust my spirit, is the time to gather the good in your hand. I entrust my spirit, is the time to gather the good spirit from the evil spirit. That is, this is the main time for secluded meditation, secluding oneself with one's maker and expressing oneself before him, speaking to one's heart and searching for the good spirit, that is, the good points that one still possesses, choosing them from out of the evil spirit. This is represented by melody through which one guards memory, meaning that through this one merits remembering the ultimate purpose of the future world and always thinking about one's end, always binding one's thought to the future world. All this corresponds to memory. This is, I will remember my melody by night, I will speak with my heart and search my soul. I will remember my melody by night, I will speak with my heart and search my soul. I will remember my melody by night, I will remember my melody by night, I will speak with my heart and search my soul. If you reflect upon this verse, you will find that every single word explains this concept. I will remember corresponds to memory, for one must always remember the future world. My melody is the above-mentioned melody that separates the good word from the evil. For through the melody and joy, one can remind oneself of the future world. Forgetting memory is through a melody played with the hand, which corresponds to joy, thus by night. For the main separation of the good spirit is by night, when the spirits are entrusted. I will speak with my heart, because through melody and joy the heart is guarded from the power of imagination. And one can then pour out one's heart before God like water, which corresponds to who bundled water in a garment. As in pour out your heart like water before God, so I will speak with my heart and search my soul. For that is how one is roused to speak with one's heart about one's eternal goal in the future world, seeking and searching for good points, representing the good spirit within, returning thereby to God. That is the essence of repentance, subduing the evil spirit and choosing the good spirit. This is represented by arising at midnight, for a harp hung above David's bed, and at midnight it began to play on its own, meaning that at midnight the melody of holiness that is drawn from David's harp is roused, which represents choosing the good spirit, meaning that at midnight the melody of holiness that is drawn from David's harp is roused, which represents choosing the good spirit. Which represents choosing the good spirit. Therefore, then is the time to rouse oneself to serve God. Arising then to devote oneself to serving God and expressing oneself before Him. Then is the main time of choosing by playing a melody with an instrument. Then is the main time of choosing separation by playing a melody with an instrument corresponding to David's harp that played at that time. Understand well the practical applications of this. This lesson was given on Shabbos Chanukah after the rebbe nach, meuman gave this lesson. He said, I have now explained how the light of Chanukah candles in the category, how to light the Chanukah candles in the category of drawing holy anointing oil and lighting the candle with holy anointing oil, which represents das as known. This represents the above mentioned increasing. This represents the above mentioned increasing of das, which corresponds to memory. He explained no further. In reference to earlier in the lesson, who gathered a handful of spirit, who bundled water in a garment. This is, he blows his spirits, and the waters flow by blowing the spirits, gathering and collecting the spirit with one's hand. This causes water to flow, as in, who bundled water, which represents the heart, as in pour out your heart like water in some. This is what our sages said. One should not assume a parallel between two torah laws by oneself. One should not assume a parallel between two Torah laws by oneself, for a person may assume a parallel that arises from the power of imagination by comparing one thing to another. Thus one should not assume a parallel comparing one thing to another by oneself unless one has received it from one's mentor, and his mentor from his mentor, all the way back to Moses, who received it from God, in order to be spared from the power of imagination. Lesson number 55, the Rebbe's own words. That was just said. I used to be in a grave digger once, chased after its feet deer into the holiest thigh bone of a dead man. After chasing it for 3 parts, I had not caught up with the deer, nor had I reached the end of the thigh bone. There, when I turned back, it told me that this belonged to King Og of Bashan. No, it is impossible to witness the downfall of the wicked other by way of the power of the land of Israel is incident in my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool by your feet. The Yeoman right corresponds to the land of Israel as in Benjamin, Ben Yeoman, son of the right, since he was born in the land of Israel.